Thank you, everybody, for waiting. We are joined by some students today, and they were part of a student project, a studio sponsored by Hankook. And we are joined today by Antonio Islas-Munoz, Alejandro Lozano Robledo, Justin Meyer, Hunter Elmore, Enrico Suhm, I believe. Myself, Jaron Dorman, and Tanner Veer. Just to quickly introduce myself, and then I will give it away to Antonio, and he'll bring more context into what this is all about. But my name is Jaron Dorman, and I am the design community manager at Gravity Sketch, and I am basically connecting all of you to Gravity Sketch and interacting with all of you. And so we do interviews like this every week on Thursdays. And we just try and highlight designers, artists, creators in the community doing amazing work. And so today is really special because we have multiple projects that we'll be showing all of you. And it's looking into the future of wheels and of transportation. And so, but I will give it away now to Antonio to introduce himself and talk a little bit more about what we're going to be seeing.
Thank you so much, Jaron, for the space. I want to mention that Jaron is one of our proud alum from the University of Cincinnati Transportation Program. We're proud of the work he's doing in Gravity Sketch. And yeah, this was a fantastic project. It was done in the middle of this Midwest city in Ohio, where fantastic things are happening. I'm going to steal the screen for a second to show you a little bit of what's going on there and a little bit of the background of the project. From like 2016 on, we had the opportunity to relaunch our transportation program and rethink how the design of vehicles was going to happen under this new world with all these new megatrends converging at the same time. And this upcoming revolution of mobility and of urban spaces and all of that. And we created the space that you're looking at here, where we can do multidisciplinary work, where we can create fantastic to do work with our advanced visualization lab. If you see Enrico here, back from when we were doing the studio. And on the right, we have kind of like when you adopted the emerging technologies such as virtual reality, with which Gravity Sketch has been a fantastic partner in helping us develop that. And you can see Tanner here developing his capstone project. So it's an interesting space that we think is a vision of the future design spaces. And me as the head of transportation design, it's been a pleasure working with these guys that are connected into kind of like building this vision. It's an interesting thing where we can mix the physical prototyping, quick physical validation of stuff with the virtual reality work. So we can validate the stuff that we create quickly. This is even kind of like refined. We go back, we mock it up, we go back to virtual reality, we go back and then we create more faithful models in the space, and then we create design. But talking about the project, it was an interesting challenge that Hankook Tire and Technology gave us about redefining the cities of the future and the vehicles that were going to exist there. And they had an interesting approach, and the project approach that they gave us was that, like, today we live in a world where we move from A to B in a mobile entity, which can be a car or a bike or stuff like that. And what they wanted us to explore was a way to actually shift the space of point A and take it to point B, or vice versa, or just a way to see how these cities would behave with these different paradigms of vehicles. So they wanted the students to design a tire and powertrain integrated platform, which you can see in red abstracted there, kind of like the skateboard concepts with a pod that could be interchangeable on the top. And that could take up many configurations. And then with this kind of create a vision of a future city and how these vehicles would interact with that, which was fun. So students did very thorough research in trying to create a scenario of 2040, which was the year that we use the kind of like worked on the project, and understand the technology and society and economy, the future of work, how climate change would affect cities, and a lot of different things to kind of like imagine, in this case, choosing Los Angeles as one of our kind of like our target cities, just because California has first adopters. They're going to host the Olympics in 2028, which hopefully people can attend by then. It's a mega city. It has an ocean front. It's going to be hit by climate change since it's next to the ocean and so on. So it was a very interesting concept. So also imagining how people would use these vehicles and then creating these people that would live in this context of Los Angeles in the future, and trying to envision their kind of like usage scenarios and the needs in this area to find where these designs that students would fit, right? In that kind of like that context, understanding their user experience and finding the best. And what you're going to see that the University of Cincinnati students and alumni that are on the call is the results of this effort of trying to create a vehicle for this future. And the other interesting thing is that part of the deal with Hankook was that they were going to pick a couple of projects to create a video of the vision of these future cities. Which I don't know, Jaren, if you wanted to play now, or we play at the end?
Yeah, so we can play that. Give me one moment here.
While you getting gears to sharing that, Jorge Rodriguez just joined. Jorge co-led the project with me from Mexico, a consultant. Jorge, if you want to give a short introduction of who you are and how you played a role in the project.
Hi everyone. I know some of you guys. Nice to meeting you again. And hello everybody. My name is Jorge Rodriguez, and I was participating with Antonio this last course that we wave to these guys. I graduated in the early 90s. I got my bachelor's degree as an industrial designer, but also I got a specialization at CCS as an automotive designer. I was working in the field until more or less from 97 to 2004 in General Motors over the design studios up in Michigan. But after that, I put my own consultancy firm, and I started since then to give design services to many enterprises. And in 2010, I changed the whole business to myself because of the crisis. I crashed in 2009. But with all the people that was working with me, surrounding me, I changed the way I was working with them, and I started a new way of doing businesses. So since then, I have been giving advices and as an advisory in innovation and industrial design. So here I am, and I'm sorry to arrive late.
No worries. And that's why we hire Jorge's knowledge, in kind of like, particularly in the innovation side. The technical side was instrumental for what you're going to see. Well,
thank you very much for joining us as well, Jorge. Just to give everybody a little bit of context as well. So we're going to be going through each one of these projects, and everybody has about 10 minutes to present, and then we have some time on the tail of each one of those presentations to have just a little discussion. Please, if you're watching now live, leave some comments in the description, or leave some comments on the during the live, and I'll be monitoring that, and I'll be sure to send those over to the students, and we will try and get to your question if there's time, and then towards the end, we'll show once again this video made by Hankook, and in case you missed it in the beginning. Also, by the way, if you're just now joining, you can watch this entire live from the beginning after it's over. I believe actually on YouTube you can rewind as well as it's live. So this will all be available after we're done here. So Let me just go ahead and transition here. Awesome. All right, let me just bring this back in here.
That was great.
So I just want to comment and say that that was an incredible video. I've watched it numerous times. But Hankook, and Tony, you can talk a little bit about this, but this isn't the first time Hankook has sponsored a studio at the University of Cincinnati transportation program, and they've made some of these promotional videos in the past, and this is by far the most amazing one. I mean, it's definitely come a long way. I think you would agree.
Yeah. I agree, and yes, it's Hankook every 2 years does a project with a different school. Like every 4 years it's in Europe, and every 4 years it's in the US. Glad to say that we've done 3. They work with us in the only in the US so far. We have a 2012 project, a 16 project, and now we had this 2020 project. That is the 3rd one. So if you Google Hankook Tire University of Cincinnati, you're going to find all those 3, and it'll be fantastic to see. The first previous ones were led by Professor Idil Zambit, but now it's at a different institution. But it's been quite a road with them. I'm glad to say that the lead from Hankook in this project was Hee-Sung Jung, who was one of the participants for the 2nd project that you can find from 2016. So that was 2012, actually, from the 1st project. So he got hired because of the project, and now he's leading that with us, which say hi to Hee-Sung from here. It was great working with you.
Awesome. Well, I guess without further ado, why don't we just jump right into the student work, and let's dive into some of these projects and these innovations that you all have been working on, and we're going to play that video again if you missed it at the end, so it kind of ties everything together. But I think first up we have, is it Hunter first up?
Hunter Elmore. Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about you and then jump right in?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Hunter Elmore. I'm a University of Cincinnati student. I'm in the class of 2021, so about to graduate in the spring. I've had 5 co-op experiences. My first was at NERF in Rhode Island. My next 2 were at Ethicon Endosurgery, which is a Johnson & Johnson company working on surgical robotics. After that, I worked at Tangent Design, which is a consultancy in Chicago, really great place. And then over the summer, I was working at Ford for my final internship. So I'll share my screen now, if I can figure that out. So you guys should be able to see everything now. All good?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, cool. So obviously this is my Hankook project, as we've been talking about pretty much the whole time. And as we said before, as a class, we had the setting of Los Angeles in the year 2040. And so the first thing we did was we looked at that setting and did some future forecasting of how that might change and what the future problems are going to be and how we can address those to make this project more meaningful than simply something that's a bit speculative. And what I was really focused on personally was, as the city grows exponentially, overpopulation is going to bring a lot of issues for the various city lifestyles. In particular, the entertainment sector was going to struggle to adapt because skyrocketing real estate prices, as more and more people struggle for the same space, is going to mean that they have minimized permanent space as a restaurant, as a bar, as a club. And that's going to have a huge impact on their industry and how people are experiencing nightlife in the city. So the current paradigm, which you can tell by all these people's lovely faces, is extremely enjoyable. The biggest part of it that's going to change is waiting. And waiting is going to become much, much more of a severe hindrance to this entire experience because more people are fighting for less space. But what if your mode of transit actually became your space? Your table at the restaurant, your seat at the bar, no longer would you have to wait for a table or for service. It cuts out that step entirely. And when you arrive with your space with you. So because it's final presentation, it's going to jump straight into the final, which was what I was calling the Hankook XP. And it's a modular pod and platform system that is developed and designed to alleviate these issues that you would be seeing in the year 2040 in Los Angeles, particularly in the nightlife and entertainment districts in the city. And also takes into account that it's a constant use vehicle. So a lot of the design and thought process behind it is focused on servicing and functionality. Obviously, at the very beginning, we talked about the prompts focusing on the platform and the wheel because it's Hankook Tire and they're a very technologically based company. So the aesthetic that I was going for in this project was very rigid, robust, firm, and a bit cyberpunky in a few ways. But the main interest of the platform was to focus on the availability of the platform staying consistent. So having streamlined servicing, making everything modular that can be so that if a part does break, you don't have to have the platform off of the road, out of the ecosystem of the project or of the product for very long. So easy accessibility, servicing panels, sensor locations, all of that are very deliberately placed to make sure that the entire platform can be serviced quickly and efficiently, meaning there's more uptime, less downtime, and faster servicing. With the platform system, one of the things I was focused on as well was looking at the suspension components and how you can place different size pods and different experiences on that same platform. So I went with a kind of 3-point suspension-based system with a larger suspension pillar in the middle to take most of the brunt of the weight of the pod, and then 2 variable connection points on the sides to control body roll and all other kind of componentry, as well as electronic connections, because all of the technology is trying to be maintained in that platform as opposed to the pod to make the system more affordable and more feasible from a business standpoint. And again, taking into account the ideas of making this as diverse as possible, that central main pillar of suspension can adjust to create directionality because obviously the entire platform is symmetrical from front to rear when you combine 2 of them together. So having some sort of directionality by letting it expand when space is not precious and then contract when space is precious is all part of that concept, and creating easy silhouettes to see and identify what direction the entire thing is headed in as someone that's walking on the street or a passerby. And then the wheel, which is obviously Hankook's all about wheels and tires, but the wheel for the platform was designed to take into account that same idea of modularity. So utilizing kind of new things with non-pneumatic tires, and the fact that you don't have to have an airtight seal all the way around the tire means that we can look at wheels differently in the way that they function differently. You don't have to have a full rim that's one piece consistent the entire time because you don't need that airtight seal. So utilizing that kind of ideology to have a single simple piece that could be easily manufactured and at low cost for this kind of fleet-based system and having that all each have its own independent suspension for each one of those spokes, meaning that as the wheel is moving, if there's any obstruction in the road, each one can change its suspension strength to adjust to that obstacle in the road and make it a more enjoyable experience for whoever's inside the pod, as well as making it so that if part of the wheel gets damaged, only that 1/6 segment of the wheel gets damaged, so it's much cheaper to replace. It's not like a traditional wheel where you'd have to replace an entire rim for one problem on the entirety of the rim. And another big thing in servicing is taking into account, because it's in constant use, tires are going to get changed a lot. So the spokes can actually contract. You can remove the tire and just slide a new one straight on. That's one of the big benefits of having a non-pneumatic tire. And this means that servicing and the downtime of that goes from 30 minutes to an hour for traditional reseating of tires to minutes, if not seconds. I mean, that was one of the things that they showed in the video. So you have an idea of how that worked and how it's been kind of altered and adjusted since then for the video and for the final visualization. But that's really the platform and what the platform is all about, and making sure that everything is feasible, realistic, and very industrial and rigid and robust. But the pods that I focused on a couple. The first one was a small group pod, because that would comprise most of the fleet in this system, and it's made for groups of 2 to 4 people. And the other one is kind of a single-seater pod, which would be more or less for somebody who's just trying to make it from point A to point B and get there in style, get there fast, get there in a more luxurious way than what would be expected from traditional mass methods of transportation. And again, due to the nature of the platform being a single axle, you could mix and match however many you wanted. You could make these big, giant vehicles, whatever you wanted to be, really, because each axle is independent. There's a lot more varied purposes that could be drawn from them. So the 2 to 4 pod, this is kind of what it came up as, but the 2 to 4 pod encourages social interaction between its inhabitants. So it's kind of mimicking that idea of that space you would have at the restaurant. So the interior configuration would be similar to that of a restaurant booth, where you're looking at each other and you're having social interaction with everyone around you. The overall CMF of the final was using polarized panels. So the same idea of polarized sunglasses, letting light in so that you can see, but from the exterior, it's reflecting that light. And that's mimicking the kind of high-grade stainless steel finish of everything else. Again, taking into account that this is almost an appliance aesthetic, making sure that it's robust, it's sturdy, it's not going to break down after the constant wear and tear. And utilizing symmetrical pod design, meaning that it streamlines manufacturing. You don't have to have as many molds or presses, whatever it is that you're using to manufacture these panels. You don't have to have as many of them, because 1/4 of the car can be replaced by the other 1/4 of the car or the vehicle. As for the single-seater, it's a bit more aesthetically considered and trying to be more of an outwardly luxurious experience. And like I said before, trying to eliminate a bit of that stigma of shared mobility. And obviously this one would probably be able to go faster because it's lower to the ground, has a better center of gravity and stronger aerodynamics as well. And again, utilizing that same CMF of the high-grade stainless steel body, it's holding up to constant use and abuse, and the same polarized kind of window treatment. So these were some of the photo bash renderings that I did towards the end of the project, showcasing like this is what it would look like if you were parked next to a bar or a club, wherever it might be, or if you're zooming across town in a single-seater. And that's where it was left off for the Hankook studio. But since then, I've had a lot of time. It's been pretty much a year now, I think, which is crazy, since this studio took place. And so I've done a lot of changing and updates, and I want to show a bit of that process as well. And the first thing that I've done over this, I think it was a month or two ago, I think right before the video came out, I was looking back on it and thinking, how have I changed as a designer? I've had my time at Tangent, I've had my time at Ford. How has that influenced me and taught me how to change in new processes? So I've gone back and did some more mood boarding and changing, and decided to kind of get away from some of that initial transparent aluminum reflective surfacing and get more into layered transparency, and looking at sketches and new directioning, keeping the same overall form and process and thoughts, but redefining some of the aesthetics, making the proportions more considered, and just spending more time on it like it deserves as a project. And doing some Photoshop sketches, redefining the overall consideration of everything really quickly, and then thinking about the interior a bit more, because I hadn't done that because we didn't have time to during the semester and during that studio. But again, looking at how that space could be informed by the idea of a restaurant and the 2 to 4 person seating, and moving directly into Gravity Sketch. So at the first time that I was working on this project, it was back in the fall of last year, and I think that's right when the subdivision beta came out, towards the end of that semester. So at the beginning of that semester, I was learning Alias, and it was the first time I'd ever learned Alias. And one of the things that I think Gravity Sketch is great at, and it doesn't get enough credit for, people just don't recognize as much, is how good of a tool it is to teach you theory and process behind utilizing different methods of modeling. So I had never used Alias before, but utilizing Gravity Sketch and learning how to build with the curves or the stroke and then bridging between those strokes is actually really similar, and it helps the process of modeling in Alias just kind of click in my head. And the same is true now with subdivision. So I had never used subdivision before. By using Gravity Sketch subdivision modeling, it made the process a lot less painful to move from parametric and NURBS-based modeling into poly modeling, because Gravity Sketch is more intuitive and the entire interface is very simple, and it's more of a teaching and fun program to use. So it's a lot less intimidating to move forward with that. So moving from that into Blender, and again, this part is kind of still in progress, but I've been redefining that pod and spending more time on the things that I didn't have a chance to during the project, and defining that interior a bit further. So again, this part's still in process, or still in progress, and changing a lot, but just wanted to show a bit of what it was and what it's kind of morphed into during the time that I've been working on it since then. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have. So thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. It's beautiful, beautiful work.
Thank you.
And one of the, I mean, obviously one of the big themes throughout your project, it seemed, was, you know, modularity, right? And I've seen a lot with future projects too, is that it seems like the future is more modular and more efficient use of things, and compartmentalizing the things that are being used in the future, so that we're not just throwing away or getting rid of these massive, you know, piles of engineering and technology. But, you know, also just want to comment just like on the beautiful work, obviously, as well, attention to detail and the aesthetic styling. Antonio, did you have any comments as far as like Hunter's work throughout the studio, the journey there?
Well, first of all, congratulations, Hunter. I think you've grown a lot since that studio happened, and it's great to see. And just a shout out to all the students that are watching or will watch this. Your project doesn't end the day of the critique, right? There is still room for growing and improving it, and your portfolio should represent the best that you can do, not the best that you could do then. So I think this is a great example. And yeah, like I think the workflow that Hunter took led it to be one of the two concepts that was selected for the video that you saw, right? So it was just an interesting story, maintaining kind of like this drama and this wow factor that kind of like the Hankook people got hooked on. From that point of view, while still being thorough with his process and all of that. And the other thing is that I remember at some points during the semester, we were trying to steer you through like some tangents, but you knew exactly what you wanted to do and you articulated that. So I think it's fine to disagree with your professor if you come up and end up delivering something at that level. So it just was great following the process, and yeah. Proud to see it in motion in that nice video.
Yeah. Well, again, I'll say awesome and beautiful work. Yeah. I especially love that bit how you're still, Antonio just kind of touched on it, but how you're still exploring, you're still taking it farther. You know, it's, I mean, there's this saying that, you know, art is never complete. It's just abandoned, you know? And I feel like that's a lot of the times the truth in design as well, you know? And so, at some point you do have to call it done, but sometimes there's glaring things that can be fixed, right? So, but again, beautiful work, Hunter, and thank you very much for showing. For everybody watching, I just want to reiterate that the links to all the students' work that is being presented is in the description of this video. So if you want to follow more of their work, see where they're going with these projects, even other projects they're doing, follow them on their social media. We've got those in the descriptions as well. So, and feel free to ask questions during the live. We'll be happy to answer some of those. Thank you again very, very much, Hunter. I think next is, remind me, I don't remember the order.
I think we can go with Justin Meyer if he's ready.
Awesome.
Okay, I'm ready. Let me get up my screen. see. All right. Can you see this?
Yeah, looks great.
All right, awesome. All right, so hello everyone. I'm Justin Meyer. I'm also a 5th year at UC and will be graduating soon. So for my Hankook project, I decided to focus on the future of high-rise fire rescue. So as you heard from Hunter's project, we expect LA to become a megacity by 2040, meaning the population will grow and density will increase in downtown LA. So this means Los Angeles' current sprawling environment will turn into a landscape of high rises as contractors are forced to build up rather than out. So this boom in density will greatly increase the challenges surrounding fire rescue. Although fire departments are currently well suited to tackle the small house fires that LA faces today, they're ill-equipped to put out the high-rise fires up tomorrow. So to figure out the main pain points and therefore the best opportunity areas, I completed an in-depth journey map of the entire fire rescue process, from before the fire even starts to the recovery and infrastructure repair process afterwards. So from there, I summarized my findings into 3 main problem areas. So this one is pretty straightforward, but if you're in a high-rise fire, how do you get down? If you are on one of the top floors above the fire, you likely have no great options to escape. So power to the elevators will likely have been shut off, and the stairs will either be crowded or set ablaze if the sprinkler systems have failed, or if the stair pressurization systems have also failed. So if you're in a if you can't get down, that means firemen will have to come up and get you. But how do they actually get up? So currently firefighters have to climb tens of stories while they're wearing up to 75 pounds of equipment to get to the fire and the injured people, leaving them exhausted and reducing their firefighting efficiency. Additionally, they have limited oxygen supplies once they reach the fire, leaving them with a narrow time frame to put out the fire, find and evacuate all trapped occupants before they must complete the arduous staircase journey once again. So since the stairs are a no-go, how will firefighters actually get you out of the building? So currently fire departments use fire ladders, which you can see on the left. These ladders often don't reach high enough to rescue people, and if they do, they can only remove one person at a time. It's also extremely cumbersome and time-consuming to remove immobilized people on a gurney, eating up precious minutes of oxygen that could be used to find more occupants. And then, so from these pain points, I developed a concept that I like to call an external elevator. So to both bring firemen to the inferno and rescue occupants more efficiently, it was apparent that a vehicle should exist that can climb the exterior of the building to eliminate the time it takes people to ascend and descend the stairs. So since people can't use elevators to evacuate during a fire due to electrical shutoff, a vehicle with external power could climb the building from the outside to serve pretty much the same purpose. So with that, my design requirements were to create a vehicle that must be able to climb buildings to rescue the occupants, must be able to transform from a horizontal orientation to a vertical orientation to climb the building. The platform must be able to carry rescue pods with great occupant capacity to increase the efficiency of evacuation. And with that, it also must be able to carry fireman pods to bring firemen and equipment to the inferno swiftly. So let's begin with the platform that enables these 2 pods to reach the top floors of a high-rise. So the platform is able to dock with the pods by using hydraulic connectors that extend from the sidewalls to transfer power to the pods and secure them in place. These sidewalls are also able to rotate about the center of the platform to ensure that the pod stays vertical relative to the ground. Since the platform is symmetrical, light bars at the front and the back of the vehicle change color to signify the direction of travel. I'm sorry, I lost my place here. Lastly, the pod also features independently rotating rims to ensure the secondary wheels are aligned with the rails the platform will travel on. I'll show that process of mounting the rails in just a moment. So the first pod that enters the fray will be the fireman pod that is able to climb the buildings quickly by making use of a central pivot that keeps the pod level with the ground. This allows the platform to simply drive up the building without having to worry about switching the orientation of the pod. Once the firemen get to the fire, the main door is able to pop out, slide up above the warning lights to allow for easy ingress and egress. Glass of this door is made out of ceramic glass to provide heat resistance to the inferno while also enabling passengers to see out of the pod. So after the firemen enter the apartment, rescue pods will climb the building so firemen can usher occupants into the pods for quick evacuation. So as you can see, these pods are much larger than the fireman pods since they focus mainly on occupant capacity rather than pure speed. This pod shares the warning lights, ceramic glass, and clamp interface of the fireman pod, but also features a segmented door at the front for ingress and egress. So this door is able to retract into the roof of the pod like a garage door to create a big enough opening to enter the pod without eating up too much interior room. And it is also padded on the back side of those segments for cushioning in case people are jostled in the pod. So overall, the vehicle is about the height and width of a Ford F-350. However, the length of the vehicle is significantly shorter. It's about the length of a Fiat 500. To more comfortably house the gyroscopic pod. Okay, so how does it actually work? So the vehicle will first approach the rails like a normal car. However, the secondary wheels may not be aligned with the rails. I'll show these here. So these secondary wheels will, because of this, clamps between the tire and the rim will disengage, using the main drivetrain to rotate the inner rim without actually moving the vehicle. So from here, the secondary wheels will be in the correct position to actually grab the rail. So these secondary wheels will extend until the third stabilizer wheel makes contact with the I-beam. Subsequently, hydraulics will move the wheels together to ensure a firm grasp of the rail. Once the platform has firmly grasped the rails, the secondary wheels make use of in-wheel motors to climb them. And then because the rims are attached to the main drivetrain, they're able to rotate as the platform goes around corners and starts to navigate up the side of the building. So as the vehicle is transitioning from horizontal to vertical orientation, the gyro pod will rotate in the opposite directions to keep the firefighters upright. And then at height, a door opens on the bottom of the platform to allow the gyropod's door to slide upwards and allow the firemen to enter the building. So after the pod has deposited the firemen, the vehicle switches onto an adjacent rail to allow for cyclic movement of the pods, increasing the efficiency of evacuation. This way, more pods can start climbing the building before the first one has even reached the ground. And then while descending, the sidewalls rotate to keep the pod vertical to, again, make sure that the occupants aren't being jostled around. So again, since the rescue pods are mainly focused on capacity, they're a bit larger than the gyroscopic pod. The vehicle with 2 rescue pods is about the width of a Ford F-350 and the height of a Ford Transit cargo van to house 8 passengers total with 4 passengers per pod. So since they share the same platform, the rescue pods align with the rail and mount the same way. But since these pods are too big to be gyroscopic, an empty platform will need to climb the rails first before the rescue pod can ascend the building. So the clamps holding the pods will slide forward towards the wheel, allowing the empty platform to grab a pod while keeping it vertical. So once the platform has firmly grasped the empty pod, the secondary wheels rotate in opposite directions to climb the rail. At height, a door opens on the bottom of the platform as well as the pod to allow occupants to get into the pod. So since the firemen will already be inside the building, they will be helping get any injured residents into the pod and assessing whether the vehicle should take them to a hospital. And then again, as the platform descends, it will switch tracks at the top of the building to prevent vehicles from crashing into each other and allow for a queue of pods to aid in efficient evacuation. So like the gyropod, the clamps will rotate to ensure occupants stay completely vertical. And then in the aftermath, if occupants are injured, the platform may not transfer the pod to another platform. So instead, wounded occupants will lead against the padded door and are transported to the hospital laying down to save the time of the transfer process, and to keep the occupant more comfortable. So, and then lastly, here's a vision image showing the whole system in context. So here I was picturing that these rails would be included in every high-rise as a kind of modern fire escape, and that there would be designated areas on each floor for this kind of evacuation. So since the rail is vertical, these areas would be at the same location on each floor, which should make it pretty easy to teach residents where they are and what to do in case of an emergency. So hopefully in a worst case situation where the fire has really gotten out of control, as you can see here, this situation would be able to expedite the rescue and evacuation of any trapped residents by allowing firemen to climb to the top floors with full stamina by providing rapid transportation to the ground. So thank you for having me, and that concludes my presentation.
Awesome, thank you so much. Again, great work. Yeah, it's it's obviously very technical, and I love how much you thought through every detail of the vehicle and how it would transition and transfer, the packaging. It was very well thought out. Excellent. It's almost like this might be an oversimplification, but it's like an external elevator basically, but also a vehicle.
Yep.
It's really cool.
Yeah, no, that was like the whole concept. Basically, just an autonomous vehicle that wouldn't rely on any infrastructure or any main infrastructure on the building to be able to get up it, other than the rails. But the rails should be pretty sturdy, theoretically.
Yeah, and what a cool concept as well. How you have those cylindrical sort of. I don't remember what you called them, but they extrude from the tire in order to run along the railing. What did you call those?
Oh yeah, I called those secondary wheels. I actually got inspired by Alejandro for that one because in his concept he had something kind of similar, which was a grouping of I think it was 3 or 4 wheels that they use on roller coasters actually to keep those segments of roller coaster on the actual path on those rails.
Wow, and so if, talk a little bit about, because I know it seemed like your project was more final presentation, which is great, which is awesome. Yeah. If you could just briefly talk about some of the exploration that you had, what were some of your other sources of inspiration for this project?
Sources of inspiration, we're just looking at different mechanisms. I would say Jorge was extremely helpful in this because he was exposing me to a lot of new mechanisms that I had not even heard of. Like, I think he showed me ice climbing equipment at one point, or I think it was some kind of suction technique that I could potentially integrate into the tires to actually climb the building. I also have my process doc if you would be interested in seeing that.
Sure thing, yeah. Just I know a lot of people would probably like to see just a few of the process images too.
Trying to see, let me make sure this is the right one. Oh yeah, so again, this was process doc, so it's pretty messy, but I did actually use Gravity Sketch a lot for this project. So this was really helpful for me because since this was a fairly technical project, I really enjoyed having the ability to just grab certain parts of this car and like certain wheels and just move it in different orientations to make sure there was no interference between the parts. And I feel like being able to see everything in 3D helped me come up with more feasible solutions and also just more breadth of solutions. And actually like figuring out how this thing might potentially grab onto these rails and go up the side of a building.
Are you presenting your screen at the moment?
Oh, yeah. To say, did that not work?
Yeah, I think there probably wasn't.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
There it is.
There we go. Okay. Yeah, so I was gonna say, here were those Gravity Sketch explorations that I was talking about. So yeah, similar to Hunter, like super useful for just figuring out how things work, also for aesthetics and figuring stuff out. I remember I was having a really tough time with this concept here. And so like all of these are done directly over Gravity Sketches. Like super rough, that probably took me like, I don't know, an hour to make.
So,
oh yeah,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, from here, like this kind of ended up transforming into my final direction by basically cutting this thing in half and like using half the amount of rails.
Yeah, because I could see. I was some of your earlier sketches there. It's cool seeing some of your early ideas of multiple cylinders, multiple small secondary tires as you call them, and seeing it evolve into that more refined concept that you have there. It's really neat.
Thanks. Yeah, I just took like a little bit of each of these ideas and was able to like amalgamate them for that final concept.
It kind of reminds me, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Minority Report. Have you seen that movie at all?
I have not. I've heard about it though. What is it about?
There's one it's called Minority Report. It's there's one very cool scene in that movie where Tom Cruise, is riding. So all the vehicles in this, and it's in the future. All the vehicles they ride along on highways, but then they also slide up these vertically up along into their apartment buildings. And so his vehicle comes up vertically right up against his apartment building, and basically he just walks into his apartment from his vehicle. And it kind of reminded me sort of that. And there's like this whole action scene he's on it, but that's just so cool. I love the concept, and it's super creative. Antonio,
said at the beginning of the project, just at the beginning of the project, we were thinking precisely on how the explosive growth of mega cities of tomorrow, right? And how they were going to probably grow faster than being properly planned. So there would need to be these new solutions. And talking about that, you mentioned the external elevator kind of like came up to deliver stuff, and that idea of, well, maybe we don't have to be on the ground got kind of like applied to some of the other projects as well. And Justin was always kind of like really interested in the rescue aspect of this, and kind of like how these new cities could be shaped to be able to rescue somebody in the 120th floor, right? We've all seen that movie with The Rock. So that was kind of like a really good thing. And I think we just also want to recognize Jorge, as Justin did, because his knowledge in the mechanism side and kind of like engineering side was crucial to make these mechanisms happen.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Great work, Justin. If I think we'll just keep moving along here. Is it Enrico next?
Let's go with Enrico.
Sure. Hi everybody. Thanks for having me. So maybe a short introduction. I'm Enrico. I'm, as mentioned, an industrial design student from Germany in Wuppertal, and I have the pleasure to join the studio for my exchange term. So that was quite fun. First transportation design project, and so I will share my screen. Okay. Yeah, so I was working on the platform, I call it Speaker, and basically, now it's going. Okay, so basically the problems I was trying to tackle are that the platforms that we know right now are oftentimes like those skateboards, and they are really bulky. They use up a lot of space, and also they are pretty low and maybe dangerous for the public and not that noticeable. And well, as talked before, it's all about creating a seamless mobility. And third, you have the dilemma of you want a lot of space, but the big mega cities can offer that much space. So in result, the steering and the system has to be really compact. I was trying to come up with a pretty technical, feasible solution, and split it up in 3 parts. And all is connected with the Swarm AI. So starting with the home pods, you have like those modular living spaces which can dock on to the house or whatever. And just basic dimensions, and then the system is on a rail basis. So you have those hydraulic feet, and then when the platform arrives, it just go up and the platforms can slide under, right? So you have a really variable system, and can handle a lot of different pod spaces. So the axle, I was trying to do something really compact, as I said. So, and that's where Gravity Sketch came in place. So for me, I was really used to develop like small hand devices, really product oriented. And so Gravity Sketch was a great tool for me to get into freeform shapes and get into a different scale of product. And I mean, you can see it in real size, and it was really helpful to understand the the material. So this is what I came up with. As you can see, you don't have steering space because I was approaching an Omni wheel, which I will come to later. And yeah, you have a combination of really technical and with the basic shapes, but also with some freeform surfaces. And as you can see, you have a big screen in back and front. It's symmetrical design, and the display is for communicating with the users and also with the public for like signs and stuff. And yeah, and also it folds, right? So idea is to have those little servants that are driving around, don't use that much space, and are also safe. So you also have the little ears there with the LED lights. And as you can see, also heavy duty hinges, because I wanted to feel really rugged and sturdy. And yeah, so this is basically what it looks inside. You don't need that much space of battery inside there because the system is about having the main battery in the pod. So the Omni wheel is a wheel that can move in any direction because you have a tube that goes around. So right, you have the main motor inside and then other motors that are driving the tube inside. So you can combine those two directions to move the whole pod in really compact space. And you have those roller connections inside. And yeah, basically this is the whole system. And I also thought about the approaching of energy. So the main battery should be in the pod, so it's easily loadable just from your home, and the axles itself are getting loaded from the pod while driving. So the pods and the axles can be used consistently. So it's also a sustainable way of changing and sharing energy. And here's some visualizations. And yeah. Then I have a little animation just to visualize how. Okay, let's see if that's worked. You tell me if you see something.
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
Wow. Yeah, beautiful work. Yeah, all of these are just so excellent. The Omni wheel is very interesting especially with the little rollers, because I was wondering about when you were explaining how it folds. I was wondering how does it fold and unfold, and then when you explained that it was a tube, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
there's
little rollers inside.
You can easily compress the axle by using the tubes.
Yeah. And this concept of mobile wheels and having an axle, and you call it axle, but this independent axle system is super powerful. I can see how there could be just an endless amount of applications for something like that, and all kinds of sizes. And I think it was kind of it was shown earlier by Hunter as well, as you could have an endless sort of package size for modular wheel mechanisms like this.
This one came. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm reading some of the comments, and people are just saying awesome, and there's fire emojis and things like that. So yes. People are loving it. But go ahead, Antonio. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say the concept that Enrico showed also came from kind of like when we're thinking about the future city, right? Like the way, similarly to Justin's project about the rescue and how to get to those heights. This one was about houses or apartments becoming modular in a way, right? Where you would have portions of your house are always there, but potentially portions of your house that could travel everywhere. Or if it was your, I don't know, movable room that got plugged into a hotel, which was part of some other project. So finding how to move these larger spaces, and it was a very interesting thing. It was also one of the interests from Hankook about how to actually move spaces that are not supposed to be mobile spaces, and now making them mobile spaces. So Enrico's project was really good, and again, kudos to Jorge as well for his support and kind of like with this technical thing. Although also Enrico, being from Wuppertal, they're very strong about their technical sides as well. So he had a lot of that sorted out, anyways. But that was good.
Yeah, again, super unique concept. I love the idea of moving, typically immovable or immobile spaces. It's really cool. And yeah, again, very well thought out project. Thank you very much, Enrico, for sharing that. It's excellent work.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Fantastic work.
Well, let's see here. So I believe next is
Alejandro Lozano.
Yes. Great.
All right. Well, thank you guys. It's really good seeing everybody again. I know it's been a while. Like Hunter was saying, it feels like too long ago, but it's good seeing everyone. And thank you for the opportunity. So my name is Alejandro. Just a little bit about myself. I graduated from CCS Transportation Design in 2017. I was actually at the master's program at UC when this project happened. So it was a really, really nice time and place for me because I was working on my master's thesis in transportation design. And many of the things that I explored in this project fed back into the bigger thesis project that I ended up doing. So it was a really, really awesome opportunity, the right time and place. So more than happy to talk about it with you guys today. So my project was called LARET, which is Los Angeles Rapid Elevated Transit System. Basically, the main premise for me was to really envision a future system in which we can integrate by 2040 rail and road. So the biggest concept for me was how can a vehicle that goes on the road autonomously, so with some kind of an articulation of the skateboard, join a mass rail system. It's a concept that has been exercised a little bit, but essentially this idea of you have a vehicle on the road, an articulation happens, and then all of a sudden that vehicle joins a much more concise, streamlined system. Within some of the research I was doing, I saw that some trends currently are taking place. So for example, Elon Musk with Tesla and the Boring Company, they're exercising this idea of a vehicle that can go anywhere on the road, but then have a much more place when it needs to, or other rapid transit systems. So mass transit rail, there's an example here from the project that Jorge himself worked in, and there's some really good examples out there. So those were inspiration for me. Joining the two cities of Santa Clarita and Irvine that connect through LA, so making this journey much faster and giving users the opportunity of choose when to be driven on the road and when to join a much faster system. Essentially, the atmosphere I wanted to capture was this idea of a focus pod. So what if you had a mobile coffee house, for example, a coffee house lounge, or a place where you could have a co-working space as you commute? Initially, I was thinking of 11 people. So this was the atmosphere I wanted to create for the case scenario, but potentially many more. Thinking of multiple kinds of users, in this case, a marketing consultant who has to commute to LA back and forth, giving her the chance to really do this and be productive. But essentially, the main premise is, as you'll see in this project, the focus was on the function and the system. So like I mentioned before, I was working on a much bigger thesis for my master's in design at UC. So I was really trying to think of infrastructure, mobility systems, and this was my chance to do it because I had done some more traditional automotive styling projects from before. But in this case, the idea of you have a vehicle that autonomously goes on the road, then joins a ramp or a platform in which it articulates its skateboard and then joins a mass transit system, essentially coexisting both. In my process, again, Gravity Sketch was super helpful. And like you'll see in a couple of different places, I find myself using Gravity Sketch for some unconventional reasons too. So I used it, of course, in the exterior exploration to find the right volume, find the right platform from which I could sketch and go back and forth. Or if you look at the interior exploration, just finding the right configuration. Again, I was thinking of a focus pod, a commuting coffee house vehicle, for example, and finding the right balance between occupancy and then productivity and in the atmosphere was key. But where Gravity Sketch really, really helped me was to try to figure out how to go from the road to a rail system. So that was a huge complexity that, thanks to Jorge especially, his expertise was really, really helpful. But in Gravity Sketch, I was really trying to envision different ways in which you could have a skateboard that allowed a vehicle to go from the road to a rail. One example that I was able to pull back from my process is this one, in which I was trying to build a quick mock-up of a ramp. Again, very, very loose and sketchy, but at the same time, trying to figure out how to do this. So basically, doing a Gravity Sketch storyboard, essentially, in which step 0 is the vehicle is on the road, and then it joins the system. And the idea at this point that I had was having two rails, one on the bottom, one on the top. And as soon as the vehicle begins the coupling process, which is autonomous, there's this ramp that elevates it to height, and then it starts articulating the skateboard where the wheels are. And there are these two discs that are autonomously also moving at the same time. And there's a point in which they couple through maglev technology. So magnetically they attach. And at that point, it joins the rail system. And then that was the idea of, okay, eventually it ends up back in the rail system. And I guess another quick examples were just thinking through the environment on the inside. I didn't focus too much on the aesthetics at this point, but it was just really finding the right balance between productivity and that atmosphere of co-working space. So envisioning a co-working space, but in a vehicle. So moving on from here, at the midterm level, I had a pretty good idea of what this needed to be. Again, there were some gaps yet to be explored, but it was this idea of the articulating skateboard that really allowed that transition to happen. Later in the process, I was able to spend a little bit more time refining Gravity Sketch. Again, the aesthetics weren't the main focus at this point. I was really, really trying to figure out the transition aspect. I was looking into generative design, some of the sources of inspiration. So creating these structures that really allow and support a vehicle that can do this. So Jorge, again, was super helpful with this part of the process. And I went through multiple iterations. These are just a couple examples, but in Gravity Sketch, it was really, really easy to map these things out and really go step by step in seeing that. So after the midterm point, I found an analogy in airplanes. So airplane wings are supposed to support a huge load of pressure force when the airplane is taking off, landing, or in flight. So what if the skateboard itself was an analogy for an airplane wing? That was a really crucial idea that took me to the next steps. So at that point in Gravity Sketch, I was able to translate that directly to Alias, which is the software that I had used the most, and that's where I iterated most of these concepts. And that took me to the final concept. So from now on, I'll be explaining some of the main features. And again, the main focus was on the system perspective, the articulation. So that articulation happens in a gull wing style. So basically position 1 is on the ground, position 2 is on the rail, and it articulates to the outside, but the pivot of the wheel is collapsed basically to allow that movement to happen. And then the way it happens, like you've seen before in the diagram, is there are two rails, one at ground level, one on the top. And essentially that's the stabilizer that allows all of this movement to happen. And it uses maglev technology to stabilize the pod as it does it. And how it supports it is through this skateboard structure that is inspired by airplane wings. Again, going with the analogy of airplanes, I also included a coupling gear mechanism that is hidden on the floor of the vehicle, but then it deploys when it senses that it reaches the platform. And that, again, with the top of the rail, it creates this electromagnetic field as it goes through and begins the articulation. Something really interesting that Jorge actually suggested was that the rail itself was not perpendicular to the ground, but rather on an angle towards the inside. This allows the vehicle to be much more stable, and it reduces the friction. So again, with that in mind, I also designed a wheel that can go from a cylindrical shape to a conical shape. So this deformation of the wheel also permits much more stable ride, because safety would be a huge concern in here. And the way it does that is the wheel of the outer rim, it has a structure that expands while the one on the inside remains. And then it has micro polymers that are magnetic, and it senses the contact surface area. So as the vehicle moves, it allows this stabilization to happen. Again, since this was a project for Hankook tires, the skateboard component and the pod component were really important. So how does it do it? The functionality was a huge priority. I was looking a lot into generative design, and I went through multiple studies using generative design in Fusion, and then mixing a couple other software, find the right balance. And this was essentially what ended up coming after all of those studies. And it was really about offering this new experience of a concept vehicle that you can work in as you go, but then it offers the modularity of the road and the rail. Another component of the project was really thinking through more functionality. So the one I proposed for this project was the focus pod, but potentially you could have all kinds of pods, both for cargo or more traditional transportation, or many other kinds of vehicles from which the skateboard applied. And then you would have these stations, basically, in which autonomously the vehicles would drop them and pick some others up. And it would be on demand, since we're talking about 2040, we're talking about hyper connectivity, so everything communicates with each other. Essentially, that was the final idea for the concept. And then also thinking through how lighting can communicate different features. So maybe when it's on the road, it communicates through lighting what it's doing. And then when it joins the rail system, it also changes its language. And like I've been mentioning before, for me, the use of Gravity Sketch has been a little bit more on the system side. And since I was working on my master's thesis project, what I was able to prototype here, feeding a lot into the final project I presented. So that's where my version 2.0 continued, I guess, in some way. But essentially, that was the project. It was really fun. It was really interesting just thinking through the complexities of the future of mobility systems. How can we integrate a vehicle that goes on the road and then joins a rail system, I guess, was the main premise. And from a conceptual level, that's where I kept it. But there's definitely lots more to explore yet now that the concept is there. So yeah, thank you, everyone, and happy to answer any questions.
Well, beautiful work, Alejandro. Really cool concept. It was really cool. One thing I'll just say that I'm just, one of the things one of the first things I remember is just like, I love seeing your explorations in Gravity Sketch and how you were trying to find these different functions and systems. It was really interesting, different exploration in Gravity Sketch than we usually see. It's usually aesthetic exploration and all these different stylings, but it's just another example of how you can use VR to explore, not only how things look, but how things can literally function in a system, in a network. And what a really cool idea. It's just like a vehicle that is on the ground and then transitions into this rail system, and it's very grounded. We're all familiar with rail systems. It's a very proven form of transportation as well. It's super, super efficient, super fast. And it's almost like you're bringing the best of everything in public transportation and transportation together in this project. And it's just really, really unique. And the angular wheels, I thought that was really interesting as well. I've never thought of something like that before. And you were saying you got some inspiration for that from Jorge?
That was all Jorge.
Yeah, I remember you were saying, seems like a lot of people have gotten some inspiration from Jorge. I'd be interested to hear some of his thoughts on
He's a very inspiring person.
Yeah, the studio and the project. I'll let Jorge speak or Antonio speak a little bit about the journey.
I think it was a very interesting project, and I was very glad working with all these brilliant guys, because actually it was a very high complexity project, because was not only the objective of Hankook do tires. So supposedly was the main in other projects, the tire was the main actor on the scene, right? But in this case, was three different system. Was a system integrated by three things. The pods, the platform, and the tire. But one of the important things to figure out here was that we had to depart from 2040. We had to think how the city was going to be in 2040, how the people is going to behave in 2040, because all the changes that could happen, and after that to land those concepts into the reality. So one of the most difficult things here was that to designing the pod, which is going to take place in singular way inside of the city, was a huge challenge. The platform was another, and suddenly everybody was forgetting, the tire. So remember, guys, the main actor here is the tire. So we need to somehow to incorporate the tire into the whole system and make the tire of the first player, because he's going to give the sense to the whole system, So this was one of the most difficult things for me to face San Antonio and to give guidance to these guys, because sometimes it's very, very, very easy, because it's not going to be realized or to be done in real life. But it's very easy to say, okay, we are going to have a piece of technology which is going to make magic, and you do it like that. And I was telling these guys, we need to approach as much as possible to a real solution. So this was a really fun and an interesting way of guide these brilliant guys, and for me it was a real pleasure to work with them in these projects.
Also say that the rail system, the rail transit from Wuppertal, was also an inspiration for this kind of project. So that was also fun. They have a beautiful suspended train that goes around the city, and it's been there for like 100 years. That was a fantastic thing to see. That even like to see the future, sometimes you have to see the past, right?
Wow. That's amazing. It's incredible work, and it's so cool hearing from you, Professor Antonio, as well as Jorge, on you guys directing this studio, and definitely seem to have infused a lot of inspiration and into those projects as well, and allowed the students to just be creative and come up with really cool new stuff. So awesome. Well, I guess we have one final project, right? It's Tanner Vanderveer.
Yep.
Well, I think you know a little bit.
Yeah, I might know him. Tanner and I are friends from school, and so it's good to see his face again. But Tanner always was pushing us in school, because he always had crazy, amazing work, and so. And still motivating me even now. So, but it's good to see you again, Tanner. And but one thing I want to say too is after Tanner presents, I'd love for you guys, you and Antonio and Jorge, to just talk a little bit more about the studio and how you guys organized this system for the future of tires and transportation as well. It's something I kind of wanted to cover more in the beginning, but I forgot to mention it. So, but anyway, I'll shoot it over to you, Tanner, and take it away.
Cool. So like Jaron said, we're friends from school. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Cincinnati. Like Jaron, graduated this spring, and am now working at Cannondale Bikes. But yeah, I'll go ahead and share my project. Cool. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Sweet. So my project basically centered around the idea of urban farming and overall shifting the paradigms of growth, harvest, and distribution through modularity and locality. So in a current paradigm, produce is grown on like these really massive plots of land and then shipped quite long distances to large supermarkets where, it sits on shelves and eventually becomes food waste. And the system stresses resources and doesn't even get the produce like directly to the consumer. So you can see on the left, like you have these big plots of land, and then you're shipping produce, on average 1,500 miles, where the produce is frozen, it's losing nutrients and things like that. And then you're putting it on these giant shelves in supermarkets where people still have to leave their homes to get it. So there's like this disconnect between the farmer and the person that's actually eating the food. And like with that, there's a lack of sustainability, right? So given the future concerns regarding resource stresses due to population growth and climate change, the system will need to change. There's already food deserts, people lack access, cities are getting bigger, there's less farmland available, and it's kind of like a triple threat, right? So you have less space available, then you're transporting the food to supermarkets, and then also double driving to the supermarket as a consumer. So there's like an unnecessarily overlap of transportation. And then when you actually get to the store, you need even more space to park all of your cars and things like that. So overall, it's just not really a efficient system, and there's some room for improvement there. So like I was talking about earlier, there's the farmer and the consumer, and ultimately the farmer is in control of the farming, and in this case, the urban farming. The consumer consumes those products. But in my project, the vehicle that I've designed actually handles like the rest of that process. So the farmer oversees the whole process, but the vehicle does all the work. So it plants it, it grows it, harvests it, distributes it, and then ultimately takes it directly to the consumer. So looking at initial concept ideation here, originally I was thinking of really small scale transport where the wheel was actually the transporter in itself. Like say you order an apple from the store and it just brings you an apple, like kind of an Uber style thing, but in a really small scale. But then there was kind of a talk and an ask for a little bit more community with this. So some of these concepts here is where the project ended up leading towards, combines the idea of allowing the farmer to take their farm with them directly to consumers and sell that way. So in a future paradigm, you can take something like a parking garage with currently they house a bunch of cars, but if we're thinking about 2040, where there's a lot of autonomous vehicles, people are sharing vehicles, ultimately vehicles are moving more and parked less. Ultimately, some parking garage spaces are going to be left vacant, which gives the opportunity in combination with vertical farming innovations to create this urban farm where you can grow crops with better crop yield, less space, and like 95% less water usage, while utilizing a structure that's already there. So the overall scenario for this project, as you'll see moving forward, is you have the platform working around the farm, the platform on the road driving to its destination, and then the platform serving as a mobile market for consumers in a neighborhood to buy fresh produce. Looking at the aesthetic direction, basically it's very clean, natural, and kind of soft and friendly. It is a farming item, so it shouldn't be aggressive in any way. Obviously, this is a project for Hankook, so a lot of thought was put into the wheel. The basic idea of the wheel here is that you have the axle, actually the turning axle in the center of the wheel, so that you can kind of turn with multiple wheels, as you'll see later, and overall just gives you more flexibility. And then also looking at the whole system as a whole, doing a lot of hand sketching, Photoshop sketching for the design refinement here, looking at shapes, trying to make it feel futuristic and approachable and also kind of different. And then from there, moving into CAD development, where I'm working from kind of Fusion 360, Alias, and a combination of the two, and occasionally moving into Gravity Sketch to kind of validate those things in more of a full scale. I don't have any images of that, but that was part of my process. And then landing on kind of more of a final concept in the bottom right. And this system, this package is about the size of a current full-size truck. I wanted to keep it within those dimensions because it is living in an existing structure of a parking garage. You need to be able to clear the height clearances as well as get around in the kind of tight spaces there. This is the final wheel design. I have a little animation showing how that works. So the outside rolls around kind of like a bearing, and then the whole wheel turns on that axis. So you don't need like an axle and rack and pinion system running through the whole vehicle. In terms of the platform, there's three kind of key parts to it. You have the platform itself, which is kind of the workhorse. It helps with harvesting, planting, growth, etc., as well as distribution. In the middle, you have the hydroponic garden pod. This is where you're doing the actual growing at. And then the passenger pod is where the farmer can sit to take his farm with him. You can kind of see here how that works. So the pods can, the driving pods take the plant pods and then combine with the passenger pod to create this full system that can then move to the road. You can see the wheels turning there, as well as how this vehicle will kind of open up during a market scenario. Just some kind of final design images here. So really soft forms combined with crisp edges to make it still feel a little technical, but very friendly, inviting, and overall just accessible to more people. Some more images here. So if we look at this scenario in terms of context, first we have the farm. So what that parking garage might look like as a farm is you just have a bunch of these pods lined up. You're growing vertically within each pod, and then you have different driving pods, robot pods moving around, picking up pods, dropping off pods, helping with planting, growth, things like that. And then they can combine to then leave the system and go onto the road. So when you're on the road, driving to your destination, it's important to note this is over short distances, so within neighborhoods, which gets rid of a lot of the current problems. And then the final part is the mobile market. So this is where a bunch of these systems can kind of meet up and hold a market where communities can come and buy fresh produce, whether that's in a local parking lot, a park, wherever that might be. It gives the farmer the flexibility of taking their farm with them and getting directly to the consumer, so you reduce the redundancy of the transportation there. Just some final images kind of on a ground level of what that would look like, as well as when it's closed up. And then an additional look at the wheel. And then this obviously got into the video and was changed a little bit, but I really do like what they did with combining it kind of with hunters in terms of the platform aspect. I think it makes a lot of sense. And it was just a great addition to the project, I think.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Tanner, for showing us that. It's a great project, and I love. It's definitely a different flavor of transportation project. You know, focusing on food and I love how you just married married these things together of new ways of transportation, because it's still a very like relevant and futuristic transportation project, but you also brought in just like fresh produce, fresh food element to it, and just like communal experience, but that is unique to food and like food truck kind of community. It's just, I don't know, I like it. It's very unique. And I love one of the images that you showed, I think it was like two before this one, was the different kind of like ways that each of the modules could like sit oriented. Like some of them, it's like more of a kind of a food truck, traditional food truck thing where you grab the food, you can give it out, or people can go look at your food like on display. I just think that was really cool as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was fun to kind of tackle a problem that's outside of the realm of like, I guess, Flash in a way. Like it's not the most exciting thing, but I think it is very exciting on a personal and like, actual living level.
Yeah, it's something very relevant to people's everyday lives, and all transportation is, but it's just like this extra element of food and produce is just really cool. Jorge or Antonio, did you have any comments on this project as well?
This is one of my favorite projects ever, because Tanner did many things right that were very, very difficult to pull together. The most superficial one, but it has its challenge, is to make a vehicle that it's made of 3 parts look unified and look cool when it's together and when it's not. That's just a task on its own, and that would be valid for a full project of a transportation project that's about the vehicle as well. But the featuring exercise that Turner did from the moment that the group identified the kind of like resource stress that mega cities would have in the future with global warming, with kind of like climate change migrations, and just LA losing a lot of the land that's in the valley that will become kind of like more inhospitable. It was like something that will need to happen, right? So it's a relevant project. It's a project that understands the kind of like infrastructure that's going to be obsolete. So it's sustainable not only in the way that it envisions the way that we create food, but in the envisions the way that it lives. And for this one, I will also shout out and give credit to Dr. in strategic foresight, Giacomo Ratowski, who intervened with us in several classes and helped us kind of like put together some of these dots. And that's what he does, identify some of these things. And Tanner took some of those insights and then kind of like put some of the other stuff together and came up with this concept that just beautifully responded to that. There were several points of the project where kind of like Tanner was kind of pushed towards other directions. He were transporting people or something like that. And he was another one that would kind of like held with his concept and developed it beautifully, and just a very full project without holes. As much as you want to poke holes on it, it's very solid. So just want to recognize Tanner for the work on that.
And another interesting thing is that with the imagination and the brand new brain that these guys has, with the experience we have in the land, the mixture of both knowledges give this kind of results. Because at the beginning, when we were thinking about the whole project, was very interesting because supposedly, in the future, the mobility was going to change for completely. So how to find out solutions for tires that really were going to be useful on a way that the 5G communication system is going to be all over the world, and maybe many people is not going to move like it's happening today, with this pandemic. But anyhow, to find out this opportunity area of of the vertical farming and all that stuff was amazing. So I think was a very huge challenge to really come up with a believable way of doing or creating a transportation who helped the whole system. So it was a really very interesting project.
Yeah, well, it certainly comes out in the project, and I would say it was a successful execution, as with all of these projects you guys have shown today. Thank you so much for presenting your work. It's incredible, excellent work, and Hankook seems to have really kind of pulled it together into this cool, cohesive story, and shown the work in its best light. Well, if we're pretty much right on time, actually. It's okay if we go a few minutes over, but I thought that we would probably go pretty far past, but I'm pretty amazed of how we were able to keep on time. So excellent job to all of you as well, presenting your projects. You've obviously presented them a few times probably already, so you're pretty used to the cadence of everything. But if you just wanted to maybe to sort of just to tie this on a bow a little bit, Antonio and Jorge, as well as anybody else, and Alejandro, Hunter, Enrico, if you just want to talk about how you guys came up with how you were going to design in this system of transportation and tires, because in the Hankook video, it very much tries to take these concepts and make it a cohesive story, make it a cohesive environment. What were you thinking and planning in the beginning of this project to make everything kind of at least somewhat connect together?
Well, I think it was mainly the idea of letting the context and this future city conditions with the mega trends that were kind of pretty much like then. They're still like now, but now we would have the added complexity of the pandemic, which we didn't have then. But rather than kind of like go and jump and create just a design of a vehicle that's cool, that does cool stuff, let the context and the people placed in that future context and the empathy of the students as they envision the lives of these people and their experiences in this future context yield out what kind of vehicles they would need, right? And then focusing on the innovation of the tires and the pods and the station. So I'm gonna share my screen just for a second to show kind of like some examples of different proposals where we think mobility is going. For example, we can actually see one of your projects, Jaren, here on the top right, and Tanner. But as you can see, like we and here is Enrico's animation. We do love sports cars. We do love the car as an entity, but it's not necessarily the only thing that the world will need as we move forward. There are other types of mobility, whether it is micro-mobility, whether it is mobile living, which you can see there in the middle by Aiden Rosario, that are really just, our world is changing rapidly, right? There's people that in cities that are very expensive, they can no longer afford rent even if they have a full-time job, or by recreation, you can transform a living space into a mobile space that you can connect to other services and make some cool stuff out of it. We have new types of mobility like Hyperloops, right here by Park Ashikar, and Joe Alwyn on the top left who designed a mobility station as well. So the spectrum of mobility is bigger than creating just a vehicle that moves people or moves things. And I think part of it was creating the vision of that city and then filling in the blanks. Just real quick, I want to say, like, we had a new concept of fire truck by Alan Hiller, an actual graphic designer who was in the class and created a project over there. Fang Yezhou created a mobile workspace where you can undock the platform and use it kind of like a Segway, which was fantastic. With Grace Weber, who had kind of like this Zen massage relaxation pod for a world that's feeling more with more and more stress. We had police cars, Jasper Mendo. We had a kind of like moving rooms with Birkin Orac, with Selim Ofles as well. Manuel Oman had a mobile hotel room. Park Kashkar had another rescue car. Maximilian Kleist, another habitable vehicle that moved. Tanta had a food truck. Sebastian Kruger had another like single person moving. So like everybody kind of like created different types of vehicles for different areas and create this vision. When you put them all together, we're kind of hoping that Hankook would take all of them and create like a 2-hour video, but that's probably too much to ask. But it was just so much fun to kind of like envision. Let the future context give you the mobility solutions, right? I don't know if you want to add anything, Jorge.
Well, I think you pretty much told everything about the planning, but I think it's brilliant, the initiative of Hankook of allowing, schools and brilliant guys to envision the future. I think it's a very brilliant idea because this way, even that there are, fictitious projects, they are going, towards the reality and give more ideas to the people which is creating, in fact, all those systems in real life. But actually, for example, Antonio and me were working actually past the last year in a personal rapid transit that actually is going to happen joining the North Campus and the South Campus of the San Jose, California University. And we faced lots of problems in real life that we use all that information with these guys, to really understand what's really happened in cities, what's really happened with the behavior of people, what's really happened with the changes that are coming in the future, and how we tackle all those challenges to design new products, new services, and new systems. So that's why it's very important this initiative that Hankook is doing, because allow us students, professors, and thinkers to really envision the future, and it's going to help in some way, but it's going to help. So, of course, if I'm just finishing with this great tool with Gravity Sketch that allows us to envision in more real life how spaces, how things can work, and also it's a really interesting tool to use, because I jumped in just in this year, and I got crazy, because I am a 50-year-old guy, which is kind of confused between reality and virtual reality, but it's really great to start jumping in those technologies and start facing how designers are going to start resolving problems from now on.
If you guys, the students that presented, have anything to say, because you guys were in the thick of it. You put way more hours into this than we did, so you deserve to have your say.
I mean, I would say like one of the biggest challenges was this project has been done, not exactly this project, but the Hankook project has been done several times before. And having the constraint of a wheel or a tire being the center of it is like very difficult to find new water to tread. And then also not trying to step on other people's toes in the project of like, taking what they're doing too much was probably one of the most difficult things for me.
You did very well.
Definitely. I also wanted to add that, this project had probably one of the highest complexities. So in other transportation projects that I've been a part of, for example, it's either they give you the persona, you have to design around a fixed architecture, or you're given a scenario basically. But the highest level of complexity, which was this project, is a system. You have to think of a systems perspective. You have to solve very complex issues. And like Antonio was saying, the vehicle is a response to all of these phenomena. So it was really cool working in almost like a multidisciplinary approach. as designers, diving into complex problems. And it was really helpful that as a class, we dove into the research together and we shared all of these macro insights. And then like everyone has been saying, we all chose a very specific problem, but based on a very complex task. So if we had gone individually into all of this scenario just by ourselves, it would have been very, very complex. But the fact that as a class we chose a city, we chose general complexities that we could just dive a little bit deeper than individually, that made it very relevant. And yeah, it's just one of the highest levels of complexity for a project, but it was really rewarding seeing where everyone ended up with this project. And I think that more of these should happen for sure, especially at a student level. These offer ways of thinking that no styling project can offer.
Yeah. And just to add to what they've been saying, it was a very unique studio in pretty much every sense of the term, because it was our collaborative studio semester. So we had students from industrial design and transportation. We had students, like Antonio was saying, from graphics, from fashion. We had grad students of people of all different levels, all in the same studio. And it was really intriguing to get the different kind of viewpoints and see how people approach products and the process of everything differently. But in addition to all of that, the fact that it was a sponsor studio and we had the guidance of the people from Hankook, and they were really hands-on with giving us their feedback and providing their thoughts and their kind of industry professional motivations behind their projects. Seeing all that was really cool. And again, one of the great things about UC is our co-op program, and the fact that we are able to get into these professional environments from a very early stage in our schooling. So having that same kind of feeling with industry professionals in the studio courses was extremely welcomed and was just really cool.
And again, a shout to the Hankook design team. They were a joy to work with, and they really were supportive. So thank you for mentioning that.
Well, awesome. I just want to thank all of you once again. It's been a wealth of design and innovation, and I know that everybody watching has enjoyed it, and many more who haven't seen this will love it, because this will be on our YouTube, and anybody that's just now joining, because people I think have been in and out as this has been going, so this will be available after it's over. Do we want to go ahead and play that video just one more time that we played in the beginning? All right.
Yeah, let's do that.
I'll go ahead and do it real quick. And just for a little context, so this is the video that Hankook's team put together as inspiration from these projects that you have seen presented. And they basically took these concepts and made a super high budget animated, I say short film pretty much. Let me just go ahead and swap the screens here. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank all of you again for being here and for presenting that amazing work. If you want to see more of the students' work, I'm just repeating some of this again. Please go to the description of this video and follow more of their work. Follow the projects that you've seen presented today or any new stuff that they're doing. I'll also have a link to the video that we just played in the description as well. And just a huge thank you to all of you once again for joining us today. And thank you everybody that's been watching live. And have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, Sharon.
All right.
Thanks for having us.
See you. Bye, everybody.
You guys.
Thanks, guys, for joining. It was really give me a chills to see, goosebumps to see all the projects again. So thank you so much. Great to see Jaren and Tanner killing it out there. So, and everybody else, of course.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I'll see you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for staying late, Enrico. See you, everybody.
See ya.
I ended the stream, so you guys don't have to leave yet.